The Secretary of State is authorized as an officer of the executive branch of state government. The duties of the Secretary of State's office are diverse, including functions such as administering elections and registering articles of incorporation for businesses. In recent years, the office developed new IT to assist in their business services and to help manage voter registration. The office spent $1.4 million in fiscal year 2021 and $1.5 million in 2022 developing these new systems. New business filings, which are processed by these newly developed systems, increased by 28% in fiscal year 2021. This contributed to a rise in business revenues for the office of 32% for a total of $9.1 million. In our latest financial compliance audit of the Office of the Secretary of State, the department received 4 different recommendations, 2 regarding the finances of the new IT systems, and 2 others that deal with compliance issues. I'm content editor and host Eric Seidel, and I'm here with the author of the report, Stephen Altoff. Join us over the next few minutes as we discuss these recommendations and more in our latest episode of the Legislative Audit Division podcast. Okay, as I said, I'm here with the author of the audit report, Stephen Altoff. Steve, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Eric.
Stephen, one of the challenges all auditors face is how to communicate these audit reports to a diverse set of stakeholders, lawmakers, the public in general. With that in mind, I think it's always a good idea to just get a little bit of background on the subject of your audit, in this case, the Secretary of State. Can you just tell me a little bit more about the Office of the Secretary of State, maybe their function and what they do?
Yeah, so the Office of the Secretary of State does a variety of things. It oversees state and federal elections, registers and renews businesses and trademarks, maintains administrative rules and public documents for state agencies, and commissions notaries public in the state. If you interact at all with the Secretary of State, it might be when you file your annual business report with them, or if you file to run for an election.
And with a financial audit, what is it you're doing or looking at?
Yeah, financial compliance audits look at the schedules of the Secretary of State, make sure that they are stated fairly, and complying with any important laws or regulations.
Okay, well, I obviously have to ask, what is a financial schedule?
Financial schedules are really the accumulation of all the office's financial activity throughout the year. So it displays a summary of everything they've done throughout the year.
Okay, perfect. Now, I know in reading the audit report that a lot of the work you did was regarding intangible assets. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, Eric. So a big part of the work that we did revolved around these intangible assets. Intangible assets are resources that you can't necessarily touch, but still have value and provide utility. Think computer software, easements, royalties. If the asset is expensive enough and is expected to be used for more than a year, the related cost is not immediately recorded as an expense, but rather spread out over the years of its expected use. This is done to align the costs and the benefits of the system on the accounting records. So, as an example, if I spend $5 million to create a new computer software this year, but I don't start using it until the next year, my financial records will show no expenses this year, and instead I'll record a work in progress intangible asset. The next year, the software is completed, I start using it, and I expect to use it for 5 years. I would record 1/5 of the cost as an expense each year for the next 5 years.
Okay, so you're spreading out the cost along ongoing years as you use the software. You're obviously talking a lot about this new IT or software that the Office of Secretary of State's using. Give me just a little bit more information on that. What new systems were they using during the time you were looking at the office for your audit?
The Office of the Secretary of State had 3 of these types of computer software systems that they used during the audit period. The SIMS Catalyst system was a $7 million system used for business filings and was replaced in 2021 by the $2.5 million SOS Enterprise system. The office also was developing the ElectMT system, which will be used to manage voter registration upon completion.
Okay, so in this case, we know that the intangible assets are these new software systems. Let's just jump right into it. What financial issues did you find when you were looking at these intangible assets?
The first issue we found related to the office's intangible assets related to instances where the system was funded with money from two different sources. The Sims Catalyst system was financed in part with money from the legislature and in part with the office's own revenues. Likewise, the ElectMT system was financed partially with federal money and partially with the office's own revenues. Even though the money may come from a different fund, state accounting policy requires that the related asset, in this case the computer software, be recorded in only one fund and not split between the funds.
Okay, hence, as you talk about in your audit, split funding. Tell me, why does this matter?
This matters because the basis of accounting for federal money and project money from the legislature is different than the basis of accounting for the office's own revenues. The office recorded the intangible assets split between the funds based on the portion that each fund contributed to the development of the computer software. Without getting too far into the weeds, this resulted in a substantial portion of the assets not showing up on the financial schedules.
And it sounds like it's okay that the funding came from these two different sources. They just need to kind of put a bow on it and get it in one spot by the end for it to show in the schedules.
As long as they move the asset into one fund at the end, it's okay that it comes from two different sources.
Okay, I got you. What else?
The second issue we found had to do with the SOS Enterprise System's multiple modules. So remember in my example earlier how I said that the cost of developing the system should start to show as an expense on the financial records once the computer software is being used? Well, that applies not just to the system as a whole, but to smaller units of the system as well. Remember, the goal of accounting for intangible assets in this way is to ensure that the costs and the benefits of the software line up on the accounting record. So if a module of the system is being used, the office is receiving benefit from it. The costs of that module should start to appear on the financial records as an expense. The office started using each module of the SOS Enterprise System as it was completed, while the remaining were still in development. However, they waited to start recognizing the expense for each module until the whole system was complete, misaligning the costs and benefits of the system.
Okay, so rather than spacing it out as it was being used or developed, they waited till the end. What's wrong with doing that, or why is that important?
This is really important because systems like these never truly stop development. There are always new features, enhancements, bug fixes to implement. If the costs of the system aren't recognized as an expense until the entire system is complete, well, it may never happen. In that case, the accounting records overstate the system's true value.
Okay, so what did you recommend?
We ended up with two recommendations related to this. The first is that overall, the Office of Secretary of State should follow state accounting policy when they record intangible assets. The second recommendation is for the office to improve their internal controls to make sure that intangible assets are recorded correctly.
Okay, so that kind of deals with the financial aspects of these new systems. Was there anything else?
Yeah, our third recommendation also had to do with the office's SOS Enterprise System. This system is maintained and supported by an outside company that the office has contracted with. The contract requires the company to get independent audit reports as a way of demonstrating that the system meets state security requirements. At the time of our audit, the office had not asked for nor received a report from an independent auditor regarding the system's security. So we've recommended that they obtain and review these audit reports.
Okay, so in short, get a hold of those reports from an independent auditor. Now, the last part of your audit report is what I found most interesting. You took a real deep look at the office's fees, what they're charging folks for their services.
Yeah, so the office charges a variety of fees for the services that they provide. The biggest ones are when companies incorporate or when they file their annual reports. There is a state law that requires that the fees charged by the office be commensurate with the overall cost of the office. This type of requirement is not unusual for government agencies that operate like a business. And what it really means is that the office should only charge its customers as much as is necessary to provide the services. It helps to think of scenarios on both ends of the spectrum. If the office was not charging its customers enough, they may become insolvent and require a bailout from the state's general fund. If the office was charging too much, they would see large profits and accumulation of cash. What we found is that at the end of fiscal year 2022, the office had enough cash to cover 14 months of expenses. Put another way, the office could choose not to charge their customers for any services for an entire year and still be able to operate normally and pay all their bills.
Okay, and is that amount what you would expect to see normally?
Yeah, so since their operating cycle is 1 year, we expected to see that number at 12 months or less.
Okay, I can't help but ask, how does the agency find itself in this position?
Yeah, Eric, it's really important to note how this condition came about. The office did not raise their prices. In fact, they lowered fees and plan to lower them even further. No, instead, strong economic conditions in the state saw more businesses filing with the office, which means more paying customers. The office also made their operations more efficient recently, which reduced the cost of providing services to their customers. In fact, when compared to the office's peer organizations throughout the United States, they had the lowest overall new business registration fees, and their annual report filing fees were among the lowest third in the country.
And that's what I find most interesting is that the office, it does seem like they are trying to stay ahead of it as best they can, but maybe it's still not quite enough with all the new people and businesses coming to Montana. So as you kind of look forward and project things out with these fees for the office, what did you find?
Yeah, so the office requested that we project our analysis further into the future through fiscal year 2025 to see if the fees become commensurate with costs after the additional rate reductions took effect. So we looked at what the office anticipated spending and earning as revenues through fiscal year 2025 and projected how much cash they may have at the end. Our analysis showed that even though rate reductions will reduce cash revenues by about a third, at the end of fiscal year 2025, the office will still have enough cash to cover 12 months of expenses. If actual expenses end up being less or more businesses use their services than anticipated, or the office uses federal funds to pay for certain expenses, actual cash reserves will be larger than we projected. Conversely, if actual expenses end up being more or fewer businesses use their services than anticipated, actual cash reserves will end up being lower than we projected.
Okay, so then do you recommend that the office lower its fees again?
Well, Eric, since the future can be uncertain, we recommended that the office prepare contingency plans in the event that they might need to adjust their fees further in the future. The ultimate goal, of course, is for the office's fees to be commensurate with costs and its cash reserves to be reduced to a reasonable level.
Okay, so there you have it. Stephen, thanks for taking time out today. I know that talking about finances and these audits are probably second nature to you and the financial team. So I really do appreciate you taking some time out to talk to somebody like me or even the public and really try to simplify this for us.
Yeah, it's been a real pleasure, Eric. Thanks for having me today.
All right, and there you have it. That was our latest episode of the Legislative Audit Division podcast. Remember, you can stay up on all of our audit reports on our website, leg.mt.gov/lad. Thanks for listening. Until next time.